IVM.
Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach, and today with us for a second time, we have Joe Towne. Now, if you haven't heard the first episode, I recommend you go and hear that first because we are having a conversation on the performer's mindset. He is an acting coach, right? He teaches actors and he teaches performers how to get into that mind space to perform better. And I think there are lots of elements that we can pick up from there to better our lives and a lot of small habits that he talks about. So make sure you listen to the first episode, and this is the second episode. Enjoy. Let's talk about that little moment that happens before you have to go on stage, right? The moments before your performance, the moments before your auditions, right? What are the things that the performer goes through at that point of time? And what are the things that we can use in our life as tools to get over that anxiety or whatever the feelings are at that point of time?
Yeah, it's so great. I think you just nailed one of the major ones, which is nerves. What am I nervous about? Well, and let's play this out. I may be nervous about, will my work show up for me? Like you said, I studied really hard. Now I blanked. That happened to me another time. Will it happen again? What will others think of me when that happens? What will my teachers? What will my parents? What will my agent? What will my manager? What will my colleagues think of me if that happens to me? So nerves happen. Nerves happen. And I think for me, so often I had a bad experience where nerves overtook me and it interrupted my ability to recall. Maybe I trembled or I had some kind of physiological activation. I had a little bit of tunnel vision. I felt out of sorts and the performance didn't go well. And then I felt ashamed. And so seeking to avoid the repetition of that, all of my actions were organized to prevent myself from ever feeling that again. And I think that cuts us off in a different way. I think that nerves are like fuel because what is happening with nerves is our body is creating hormones that it has come to recognize are needed to do the job we've been practicing for. And if we are tight, if we're constricted, if at the moment we feel them, we immediately judge ourselves or say, oh no, and we try to tighten up. At that moment, we're not creating space for flow. Literally, we're not creating space for the hormones to flow to the brainstem, to the lungs, to the parts of us that need those hormones. So the foreman of our brain, as these hormones are pooling somewhere and not getting to their location, says, send more. So now it maybe doubles the amount that are needed coursing through our body, but they're also not getting where they need to go. And this is what's causing a bit of that negative spiral. The tunnel vision, the tremendous physiological activation, the increased heart rate, perhaps we're sweating, maybe getting a dry throat, our upset stomach. And so all of these things that are happening with regards to nerves, I'm already now on this downward spiral. And for us, it starts with the moment of physiological activation. So the moment that happens, there's an invitation to first say, instead of something negative, oh, cool, my body is switched on now. I felt that. I felt the kick. I felt the ignition turn on. The second thing I like to do is I love the feeling of my hand over my heart. I love to feel my heartbeat. I love to feel the warmth. I love to feel myself. If I'm alone in a trailer, for a moment, just take this for myself and say, thank you, body. The science of gratitude is so important. And to thank our body for what it's doing. Oh, cool. My body is switched on now. Thank you, body. And then moving into everything I need is inside me. Literally, all my prep I've done, I can't do anymore. All my nerves are there as fuel. My intelligence, my creativity, my grace. It's all inside me. So taking a moment and doing those things combined with some purposeful breath designed to get us to take the edge off of the extreme nerves that we may be feeling. So we may just need to do a breath that allows us to exhale longer than we inhale. If we want to play with breath where we're focused on an inhale and a hold at the top and then an exhale, we might even do it to a specific count. Perhaps we want to breathe in to the count of 4, hold at the top for the count of 7, and then exhale to the count of 8. I like to breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth with that particular pattern. And 60 seconds of that can be the equivalent of taking an anti-anxiotic and can really take the edge off. And it doesn't require me to run back to my house and get something. It doesn't require me to do anything that's outside of me or anything outside my control. So I think the combination of the way I speak to myself, taking a moment of pause, reframing what's happening, reminding myself what matters, breathing is part of the equation. There's more, like if we've exercised, if whether we've eaten, but in terms of what we can actually do in that waiting room, I think 1/4 of it has to do with addressing and embracing our nerves.
Beautiful. And I had to create a ritual for this as well before I would go on stage for a performance, right? Like 1,000 people from the business community in the audience. Like, how do you calm yourself down? So I have this thing about going to the toilet every single time before. Right? That is when I will do my little power posing and my little breathing. And then what I do is I do my gratitude exercise. So I was like, I'm so grateful for this opportunity to come and talk to everyone. I'm so grateful that they've come to listen to me. And when this exchange takes place, then at that point of time, there's no fear about this because now both of us are partners. The audience and me are partners in this together. So I think that's one way that I deal with this. Do you have a ritual as well before you go on stage?
Yeah. And I love what you just said, because what you've named is two components that stand out to me. One is power pose. So for those who don't know, there's great science and a great TED Talk about the physicality of confidence, for lack of a better term. And so if you stand, I think you were doing almost like Superman pose.
Correct.
There are poses we can do that open up our chest and our diaphragm that are vulnerable, that can be vulnerable. We might find ourselves hunching over, waiting in a chair, waiting to go in. But when we do that, we actually activate a sense of confidence because we're embodying what people are like when they're confident. So people may want to check out the TED Talk on that. For me, one of the main things I want to do is deal with my logistics first. So if I walk into a waiting room, I don't want to start doing my confidence and my breathing and acknowledging my nerves and then go, oh, sign in, or they don't know where I am. So I want to deal with my logistics first. I want to scan to get a sense of how much time I have. I don't want to get involved in conversations or anybody else's drama, but I just want to sort of take note of the environment and do my logistics. And the reason I want to do that is because it's the same thing I want to do when I get to set. It's the same thing I want to do when I step onto the field, when I step up to the podium. If I have no index cards, I want to place those there. I want to place my water. I want to adjust my mic. I don't want to forget that step and then have it happen later and then interrupt my flow. So the way we use small things is the way we do all things. And you've probably heard me talk in this pattern of 4 pretty consistently. And just knowing that there are 4 things helps me remind myself where I am if I get lost. So after I've done with my logistics, I want to do something to get present, because it might have taken a lot to get over there. And my phone might still be blowing up and people are messaging me and I'm trying to speak to what's happening next. And so I want to do something to get present. I might switch off my technology. I might breathe, stretch, get into my body, drink some water. Maybe I'm acknowledging what's in the room. The specifics you can play with and you can swap out and do what feels right for you. Try them all. Don't try to do them all every single time, maybe, but just have different options available to you and then feel what you'd like to do in that moment. But getting present is the goal. How do I get right here, right now? Be where my feet are. And then I want to do something to access my creative flow. So it might be putting myself into the mind of the character. And I don't mean run lines, but take my character for a walk and judge everybody's shoes in the aisle as I walk down towards the water cooler. Or maybe I imagine a moment from their life from that day, or imagine what just happened, or imagine what they think is about to happen, or imagine the cold of the environment if they are about to go into a winter scene. But doing something to activate my creativity and my flow and my relationship to the character and the world that I'm about to go into. And the last thing that I want to do is go in my most confident self. I heard you do that in self-talk, right? In the closed loop, 2 sentences that you've structured for yourself. You now are in relationship with, in collaboration with, and ready to give your speech and talk and presentation. And so crossing the threshold matters. In sports, they might tap something as they hit the wall. If anybody out there has watched Ted Lasso, they have a sign above the door that says believe. And the players tap it before they go out to the field. Well, that's very traditional in sports to have some kind of touchstone that we acknowledge before we cross a threshold. And for me, I want to go in my most confident self. So we have a practice of cultivating a self-created mantra something that is for us, by us, and not necessarily given to us by someone else, that we know puts us in our most confident mindset as we cross the threshold. So I might be in my creative flow. I might hear Joe Towne stand up. I can be smiling at them. And as they turn around to open the door for me, maybe I say my phrase and here we go. And so having those mechanics and those things in place have really served me. And I love playing with them because sometimes they need a refresh or I need to change it up.
Wow. So we're going to take a quick break. See you on the other side.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On The Habit Coach, Ashdin talks to endocrinologist Dr. Altamash Sheikh. They discuss the various triggers for thyroid diseases and ways to keep our body safe from hypothyroidism. On Misconduct, we meet Unniyarcha, legendary warrior of Malayalam literature. Raghavi and Nisha tell us how she took revenge against the man who killed her brother. On Press Decode, Sarah Vagda and Prafulla talk about illegal immigrations with reference to the Indian family that died while crossing the US-Canada border. On Ikka Dukka Economy, Abhinav and Dr. Junjunwala discuss the MSP farm law and its repercussions. And on Say No to Drama, Chetna tells us how we can make peace with the bad habits we just can't seem to quit. Also, just one quick announcement for everybody. We would like you to check out the new version of our Android app. It's available on the Play Store. It's a really interesting take on how to listen to podcasts. Do give it a look and let us know what you think. We're open to feedback on all of our social media channels. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also, do remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Word of mouth really does help. And don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. And we have a number of channels there at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube where you can take a look at them. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back. All right, let's jump into the conversation. So hearing you makes me feel so good because these are elements that I had to create, for my performance as well. So for example, every single podcast starts off with the same single line. It's my way of hitting that confidence board, right? And I know people who are listening to the podcast for the last few years will know this. It starts with, hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach. And that puts me in that frame of now I am hosting a podcast and this is what we're going to be doing. Everything else has moved out of my focus zone. And this is the only thing that matters now. And yes, I think that's so critical because, like you said, the next aspect is flow, where you don't feel that time has gone. You have no idea what has happened, right? So describe that feeling to us.
Wow. Well, I think the first time that I remember flow was probably when I got lost in playing Legos as a very young child. And there were aspects of it where I just had new ideas and I followed them and I was delighting in play. And there was a lightness and a bit of a sense of, I don't know how this is going to go. And maybe I was making sounds, maybe I was moving my body. But I think as I've moved into sports and moved into performance on stage and film, the sense of flow is a deep focus. It starts with a deep focus and a connection to an object, another person. And there's a sense of almost a quietness, but an expanded awareness. I think I'm maybe really clear with my peripheral awareness of what's happening. At the same time as I may be really focused here, I have a sense of things going on around me. And I'm lit up from within. For me, there's a sense of joy or play or mischief and losing track of that time and space.
It's these little emotions that characterize it, right? Where you lose the performance anxiety, where you lose the outcome orientation, where you focus on that moment. And I think that is a beautiful state to be in. Mm-hmm. Joe, while you were talking, I suddenly remembered a lot of people keep asking me saying that, how do I cultivate the habit of talking to people, making presentations, standing up on stage, public speaking, right? For most of us, it is one of the scariest things to do. How do you take that first step? Some people don't get that promotion because they just never want to make the presentation. Yeah. How do you get over that fear that they have?
It's a great question. And I think part of it is breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. So, the idea of specific kinds of therapy where we have to face our fear doesn't mean they just throw us into the snake pit or throw us into the ocean. It's systematic desensitization. So there's an awareness of my edge of growth and then a going just past it. And that is my flow for the day. That is my practice. And so can we systematize our relationship to the things I want to work on about being on stage in my daily life? So what is it I'm hoping to experience when I'm up there? If it's about flow, well, the first thing that we talked about is deep focus. So can I practice deep focus for 5 minutes in my daily life? If I get consumed with others think of me, then I need to come up with something I can do every day that puts me squarely into myself first. We get on a plane and they say, put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you help others. The other thing might be making the main thing the main thing. What is the point of my story? If I can come back to that, I can probably find my way back. And so we need to get lost. We need to develop a relationship to the unknown. We need to develop the capacity for improvisation. And we need to make mistakes and live through them and recover from them. And those things require risk. So what is our relationship to risk? And how can I risk small before I feel like I go make that big presentation? I'm thinking a lot about surfing as we're talking. And I'm a brand new surfer since in the last 5 years. And I don't go regularly, but I really enjoy being not great at something, because at this point in my life, I am confident enough that I know I can be good at something. So to have an appreciation of seeing how far I've come is delighting me. But if I think about it, jumping on and trying to surf a 15-foot wave, I would feel overwhelmed. But surfers that surf a 15-foot wave start out surfing a 1-foot wave. And then they surf a 2-foot wave and a 3-foot wave, so that by the time they get to the 15th foot wave, they've already sailed a 14-foot wave before. So it's not the big leap we make it out to be. It's one more jump. And so if we practice the one more jump from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, how do we do that in our daily lives geared towards this speech, this presentation, this performance? And I think 90% of what happens to us in that room is affected by what we do outside of that room. And so I think we have to organize our time, our thoughts, and our practice habits in our daily lives.
So practice the habits, understand what is important, why you're doing this, right? Step out of your comfort zone, allow that fear, embrace it, and take the baby steps in order to, overcome this fear of performance that exists in so many of us when we start off.
Yes. And I think if there's one more thing to add, you mentioned the word anxiety earlier.
Correct.
And we're in a time when anxiety feels like it is at an all-time high. And why? Why is anxiety at an all-time high? Well, there may be a lot of theories as to why. One of them, from a performance lens, is an over-consideration of what others might be thinking of me. An over-consideration. And so the idea of scanning the world for threats activates our fight or flight. It activates the part of our brain that wants to protect. It activates our fixed mindset. It puts us in the defensive mode. And we're really making it up. We don't know. I mean, yes, they have to make an assessment of our performance, but they're probably not thinking about us as much as we are thinking about ourselves. And when we are thinking more about the other person, we're doing all the things that put us into pressure, lack of confidence, things that are out of our control. And it's not going to play out well. So how can we keep coming back to this moment? In this moment, I am safe. And doing to this moment what I want to bring as opposed to what I want to get, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Because if you're not living in this moment and you're constantly worrying about what you're going to get, the moment's gone. You're just thinking about the future and the moment's gone. You're thinking about the future and the moment's gone. And you've just wasted that point, that moment in time. Absolutely. And Joe, a couple of things before we end. As a layman, we keep talking about acting, right? Oh, that actor was acting, right? That means that person was being something different from who he is or who he is at that point of time. As a performer, how do you think of acting? What is the role of acting? What does it mean?
I think it's so important to consider the role of an artist in society, which at its best may be to show humanity to itself, to hold up a mirror to all of us. And so some people believe that that is lying. because you're being something other than you. And other people believe it's the utter truth because you're revealing the truth of that moment. And I think there's a lot of different styles of acting and preparation, from using your own thoughts and memories to developing another role and stepping into that. But if you're stepping into another role and embodiment of that, you still have to live truthfully under those imaginary circumstances. So I think about first the role of the artist and the why in the greater landscape. And then within that, it feels to me like vulnerability practice to come in with a spark of an idea and then explore. And along the way, to discover in front of others and reveal the truth of what's happening in the moment. And maybe my prep work has allowed me to put on a costume or an accent, or maybe I look different than I would to my friends or my family. But we contain multitudes in us. And I did not know this when I was a teenager and falling in love with acting. And it gave me great confidence to try on anger, to try on different roles, confident roles, older roles, people who said things and had world experiences different than my own. So really, we're practicing the art of putting ourselves into someone else's shoes. We're practicing cultivating compassion together and showing humanity to itself by being in the moment and vulnerably revealing what is true.
Joe, this is exactly what I wanted to hear, because acting is not about putting on a mask. It is about actually removing a layer, right? And you remove a layer to show that vulnerable side that you don't normally show. And I think that is something that I wanted our listeners to understand, because many of them, and they write in, this is why I wanted to bring it up, is saying that I'm spending my entire life acting like someone I'm not, right? In order to fit into society, in order to fit into my friends, in order to be taken seriously, I'm constantly acting. And coming from a professional, I think this is so important for us to realize that true acting is not about putting on the mask, but the vulnerability, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you would have experienced this with people as well. You put on a mask, be different with different kinds of people. What advice would you give them from a performer's mindset?
Well, the word that stands out to me is an authenticity. If I don't feel authentically like me, how do I say this? Perhaps we need to talk about form versus essence.
Okay.
If I'm an actor, I probably take on many different roles over time, and that form will change. But the essence is that I'll probably come to very similar moments of humanity: jealousy, rage, sadness, flirtation, excitement, all of the things that we get to go and do. And what I'm hearing is that people are sacrificing what is true for them and their authenticity in an effort to please others. And I think that is something I really resonate with. The science of fight or flight, it used to be that we would be faced with a threat or a perceived threat, and we would either fight or flight. But now we know that we would either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And fawn is one of those reactions to those stress moments where we try to please others. And I think as artists, we often try to get the job and please others and want to be picked. We do it in love. We do it in all aspects, our family dynamics. And if we're sacrificing our authenticity in the process, we may not feel like it feels good to be us. So the biggest takeaway that I would want to leave people with is, when you are at your best, what does it feel like to be you? What is present? And so if you say, I'm in my body, or I feel confident, or I feel playful, or I feel sexy, or I feel strong, then each one of those are things we can practice on a daily basis. How do I develop strong, develop confidence, train those things? And then how do I remind myself of them and bring them into the room with me by warming them up, so that I go into my performance, my test, my speech full. I go in full and I share from there, instead of going in like a pauper, hoping to be filled and chosen. And I think if we can conceive of it that way and fill up with that, there's the authenticity. We have to know ourselves to know when it feels like we're being authentically the fullest version of us.
Wow. That authenticity is exactly what we need to now start showing. And like you said, the elements that we need to develop are what we feel when we are at our best. And how do we grow those? How do we grow those and become, and ultimately, like fuller human beings, like you said? Brilliant, Joe. Joe, anything that you would like to leave our audience with, anything that we haven't covered that you would like to talk about?
Well, for me, it starts and ends with gratitude. And I want to say thank you to you. I want to thank you for reaching out and for inviting this conversation, for what it is that you are so passionate about and care so strongly for the people that are writing in, that are listening, to want to bring a bridge of help to the things they're struggling with. And I know gratitude is what you bring onto stage with you. And for those people who don't know that gratitude isn't just a really nice idea on a greeting card, but is a science-based practice, perhaps scanning for 3 good things at the end of a day can make a huge difference. The science backs it up. We've heard that phrase, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. Well, they had old dogs or humans practice a few different happiness habits or gratitude habits. Some of them took 2 minutes a day. And after 3 weeks, 21 days, they moved on a scale from registering as low-level pessimists to low-level optimists. So we can change, we can learn new tricks. But what was fascinating is it lasted for 6 months. Wow. And so we don't have to do a lot, but we have to understand what to do. And we have to know, for me, I need to know why. And understanding the science of gratitude, it makes it easier to not let myself off the hook, or to remind myself that, come on, take 2 minutes. Know what you're building. Know what that's going to do to you and everybody else that you're going to meet and interact with. And so I would say it starts and ends with thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Joe, for coming and having this conversation with us. How can people get in touch with you? Tell us a little bit about the things that you're doing. Where can people continue this conversation with you?
Sure. I would so love to continue the conversation with you and anyone else who's resonating with something that we're speaking about. Our website, The Performer's Mindset, has some resources for people, has some videos and audio that people can listen to if they're curious to know more. It invites them to how they might jump into a training or a coaching if that is of interest. And it also has the first season of the Better podcast. So I've been having these conversations privately for so long and so many years, where to respect privacy, I couldn't share them with other people. And there was a pain in not being able to talk about with some of these world's great creatives process and some of the things that matter. So I started inviting these creatives into conversations, and we created a season of almost a constellation perspective. And so if you check it out, you'll probably see a lot of different types of people. They're not all actors. Not all of them are in the industry. Some of them are. Some of them are sort of renowned authors, or the person who produces television, or somebody who was the animation director for Frozen. So we have all these different creatives. And when you step back, you start to hear these themes emerge. And I loved learning from them. I would love for people to check it out and ask questions and help us guide where we go next. And, on social media, maybe we'll put these links in there, but you can talk to me, Joe Towne, on Twitter, on Instagram. I'd be happy to.
Perfect. Lovely. And as you said, the links are going to be in the description below. So superb. Joe, thank you so much for coming on the Habit Coach podcast.
Ashton, it is a joy to talk to you. I really have enjoyed connecting with you, and I really enjoy learning from you. Thank you for inviting me to this conversation.
Thank you. Yay.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Ashdin Doc on Twitter and Instagram. You can find lots more information on my website, awesome180.com, or check out different content on my YouTube channel called AWESOME180. That's Awesome180.
Inflation, fiscal deficit, GDP, MSP, NPA, इक्विटी मार्केट वगैरह वगैरह। दोस्तों, हमने सारे शब्द टीवी या अखबार में जरूर देखे होंगे या फिर सुने होंगे, पर हम में से कितने लोग हैं जो ये जानते हैं कि इन सब का सीधा प्रभाव पड़ता है हमारी सैलरी पर, हमारे इंक्रीमेंट पर और कमबख्त हमारे खर्चों पर। दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है अभिनव त्रिवेदी और मैं बात कर रहा हूँ इक्का दुक्का इकोनॉमी पॉडकास्ट से, जहाँ पे इस तरह के इकोनॉमिक और फाइनेंशियल टर्म्स को मैं जोड़ूंगा सीधा आपकी जेब से। हर मंगलवार एक नया एपिसोड सुने IVM पॉडकास्ट की वेबसाइट, ऐप या फिर किसी भी अन्य पॉडकास्ट प्लेटफॉर्म पर।
Don't you think that if everyone around you is getting smart, you better be smarter? Hey there, I'm the traveling professor Siddharth Deshmukh and I'm back with season 2 of my podcast to make you smarter. Smarter with Sid. What's this season's focus about? Well, it's about 10-minute nuggets that will make you stand out at work. It's time to go from smart to smarter. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday and become smarter with Sid.